we met in 2005. She worked for me at an organization where I ran a fundraising operation. And actually, the entire time she worked for me, there was no romance or any kind of relationship other than co-worker and friend. And then she left that organization and went to work somewhere else. And
I started working back in politics for you, doing
me.
some part-time kind of contract work.
Money was good. What wasn't good was my marriage, and it was over. And as it turned out, her marriage never happened. She broke it off, I guess.
About 3 weeks before the wedding.
And so we had a lot more in common because we were both coming out of broken relationships, and our friendship continued to grow. And
yeah, we ended up getting really into the height of the political world, I would say, probably about 2010. We started to really get into it in the big time. Presidential races, major clients. Things were doing well.
I had worked in 2008 for a presidential candidate, Ron Paul from Texas. And I became closer with him and his family. And then in 2011, it was decided he would run for president again, and I would be his campaign manager. Through that, I guess you would say things were going well. I was pretty much at the top of my game. Didn't realize at the time that there was only one way to go from the top. And
so yeah, I would say in somewhere around 2013, 2014, we were at the top of our game. We were that couple. We were very happy together. We were building a life together. But I think we both knew something was missing. I vividly remember, I don't remember exactly when it was, but it was sometime in that time period, a conversation, just a flippant remark that, I think we should find a church. At this point, also, little did we know that there was an FBI investigation beginning, and this was going to be, I don't want to call it the beginning of the end, but it was going to be the beginning of a very rough 3 to 4 years of our life.
So on one level, things were great. On another level, for me especially, I think things were not so great. I was going through a lot, and I think that when Beth made that comment, it hit me that, probably church might not be a bad idea.
I was battling a severe addiction to alcohol and to controlled substances. And so I was battling demons that a lot of people didn't know about. John didn't know the depths of my addiction. And it was only going to get worse from there. We thought John was only a witness in an FBI case. Little did we know that the FBI was building a bigger case against him. The FBI wanted the big fish, and that was John. He was the campaign manager of that campaign that they were attacking at that time. And when you start to head into personal struggles like that, anyone who has or is battled addiction, it's only going to get worse from there. And so I was feeding a void in my life with pills and alcohol at that point. We needed to find a church, and we made a list, and we started
with a church we won't mention.
Right, with a church that we won't mention for their Easter service. We didn't go back to that church, and there was a second church on the list, and we just kept calling it this church on the hill. I was immediately just taken by the friendliness of people when I went in there. I remember the drive back to my house, we were silent. We didn't say anything to each other, and finally you spoke up and you said, "So what'd you think?" And I said, "I loved it. Let's go back." And that's kind of how we started at Battlefield. I would love to say that May 2014 was when it all turned around, but it was not. We had already started the process of separating our lives because we were living in sin. And we wanted to do things right. We wanted to get right. And we weren't sure how we were going to do that. But so we went in to meet with Pastor Greg, and we told him the whole story. And he kind of just sat there and looked at us and said, "Well, I have a better solution for you. Why don't I just marry you?" And I think we kind of both looked at him like he was crazy.
Yeah.
And he said, no, what matters to you? And we said, in the eyes of the Lord, our marriage is what matters. And the next morning, I sent him an email and I said, we're ready. And it was a Tuesday. It was June 9th of 2015. My matron of honor was Krista Corcoran, and John's best man was Josh Dobler. And Jared Kate actually played Here Comes the Bride in the sanctuary, and they made me walk down the aisle. And before Krista and Jared and Josh and Pastor, he married us. And so we actually were married before our wedding day. But that was a real turning point for us.
If I didn't know it before, I knew then we had a family at Battlefield.
Still had a long way to go.
We had a long way to go, but sometime
about August
that summer, a grand jury in Des Moines, Iowa, indicted me on 5 felonies, which I would explain, except to this date, I feel like that guy you always see on Perry Mason or Law and Order that stands up and, the judge says, do you understand the charges against you? And I always wanted to say, no, I don't. And to this day, I still don't. But I was indicted after being told that I was a witness, after being lied to by FBI agents.
So you were indicted in August, and in October of the same year, we get a phone call from John's attorney, who's in Iowa at this point for an arraignment hearing that John didn't have to be there for. I don't even remember what we were doing, but we were both home, and I will not repeat the words that were said through the phone, but they were so excited, we couldn't understand what they were saying. They were screaming into the phone, running through a hotel. The judge had dismissed every charge against John. He had thrown them out. So we get this call, and there's tears, and there's praise, and there's, John and I hung up the phone, and we hit our knees, and, we just thanked the Lord literally in the middle of our kitchen. And I cried so hard that night.
It was like, wow, God is great.
And he took that away from us for a little while. So we got married on a Saturday. We spent Sunday in our home, and we flew out Monday morning for 10 days in Hawaii. And then we flew back, and we had a layover in San Francisco. And we made the dumb mistake of turning our emails back on again. Hundreds of emails in my inbox, and one stood out, and it was a draft press release on the re-indictment of John Tate. John saw it while he was in the bathroom. I saw it while I was sitting on the couch, and that's a moment that I will remember probably as much as I remember watching John as I walked down the aisle. The look on each of our faces, we went white. We just stared at each other, and so we came home newly married to a whole new world. Because he was indicted and we were going to trial this time. Alcohol took a hold on me that was worse than it had ever been, because it was my escape at this point.
Because the case was filed in Iowa, my probation officer actually was in Des Moines, and I had to, I want to say I had to fly out there like every other week. We kept going, and we got, I think, while her addiction was getting worse, and I still was too stupid to realize it, we also really, at least, well, I know we did. We were hitting our knees more. We were depending on him more. But I was scared what was going to happen to me in prison. But I had a very eerie peace about me.
In April of 2016, we flew to Des Moines on a one-way ticket because no one knew how long we were going to be there. And we spent close to 3 weeks living in a hotel. John was tried with 2 other men who were very dear friends of ours. One of them was a groomsman, and his wife was a bridesmaid in our wedding. And so we got to spend time with those people. We got to spend time with our attorneys, and we got to spend time with people who couldn't quite figure out where this hope and this calm and this peace was coming from. So we actually, without even realizing what we were doing, we were able to evangelize and to spread the love of Jesus. And the jury went into deliberation on May 4th of 2016. They did not make a decision the first day. Remember, I think it was like 6 o'clock. We found out that
finally found out
the jury had been sent home. And on May 5th, we got up very early. And I remember John and I, we didn't say anything to each other. I think we both knew the jury was going to come back that day. And we sat in our hotel room in our Bibles and just read.
We did.
And just read and read and read. And their phone rang, and the jury was back, and the jury was back with a decision. And so us and our attorneys all wandered over, and we went in, and as you would go into the courtroom, the defendants would go in to take their seats, and the wives would go back into the gallery area. And I remember it like it was yesterday. John grabbed me by the hands and said, just trust in the Lord. That's all you can do right now. One by one, the guilty verdict came down. And, I'm sorry. The wife of the other defendant, she audibly screamed. It's a scream I'll never forget. And, we sat there and watched our husbands get convicted of something we knew they didn't do. And we just held on to each other, and I couldn't even, unlike now, I couldn't even cry. I just sat there, and this calm just came over me, and I held her. I just held her. I held on to her, and she cried so hard, and we just prayed. And we went to our room, and that's when I lost it. Yeah. And I threw my purse across the room, and I fell down on the bed, and I said, I know this is all part of the Lord's plan, but I do not like his plan right now. And we cried. We cried for an hour, and we prayed. And this will show you the relationship we had with our attorney. He was crying. He was in tears. He was broken. He hadn't, in his opinion, just let a client down. He had let his best friend down. So we went to his room to comfort him, and to let him know that there was a peace and there was a bigger plan, and that the Lord was with us. So he's now been convicted on May 5th of 2016, and sentencing is set for September 20th. Yep. There was a day that John just went in the backyard with the dogs, and I was standing at our kitchen sink, which looks out over our backyard, and all I could muster was, Lord, don't take him from me. Because I just didn't know what else to say. If you ever want to see your marriage tested, deal with the sentencing, we were having some tense moments on our way to Iowa for sentencing, and we were in the O'Hare airport, and John was whispering to me as we were kind of running to get to our connecting flight. He was saying, if I go to jail, you need to move on. If I go to jail, you need to move on. And this was like his mantra, and it was driving me nuts. And I literally, in the middle of the O'Hare airport, I stopped, I dropped my suitcase, and I turned around and I said, my God performs miracles. And our attorney looked at us and just smiled and just kept walking. And that was it. That was the end of John saying, if I go to jail, leave me. Because at that point, I had told him that I served a Lord that performed miracles, and he did. He showed up big the next day.